Hi, everybody. I've met Larry Prophet several years before I even got into NECAN at a personal development course that he was conducting, and I was blown away. And so much of life is just who we love and who loves us, and I'm just thrilled to have Larry and Pat Prophet as my friends. And Larry and Pat Prophet, tell us a little bit about your life journey and a little bit about the heart of NECAN.
It's kind of exciting for me to kind of go back in history and one of the things that occurred to me this morning, we watched a movie here a few weeks ago. Some of you have seen it, the story of Mr. Rogers, and where he took time to spend 1 minute just thinking about people who have made a difference in your life, that cared about you, that caused it even that your history could be written. And as I was thinking about Mr. Masuda this week, it's hard to know where his history really starts because obviously he wouldn't be here had he not had grandparents and parents and all these kind of things. But for me, such a unique story. And I thought I'd start with my history because it's what caused me to even have an interaction with this wonderful man. In the early years of my career, I was an engineer at GE and got involved in network marketing, an entrepreneurial endeavor. Had some real success with a company that believed that the product of the company was not the skincare items that we were selling, but that the product was us. That as we grew and learned and developed, that was what his company wanted as their product. And so he had us involved with every kind of training that was available. Some of you may be familiar with Earl Nightingale and his Lead the Field program. Well, one of the requirements for us as distributors was to get that and listen to it every single day. As Nightingale says, listen to each one of them for 30 days before you went on to the next one. And we did that. We did that religiously. He also put in a program from a company called Wilson Learning, where we became instructors for the Wilson Learning Corporation. He had a personal development program that we would involve our new distributors in a 1 week program where they memorized the scripts. His point of view was, if you memorize the scripts, then you have a choice to use them or not. If you don't memorize them, you don't have a choice. You can't use them. And so I was with that company for some time when they asked me to become a trainer for that company. And so then I got to do those training programs all over the country. Well, as a result of our success with that company, they asked me to become a corporate officer. And they sent me to Australia to be the vice president of marketing of that company, and then decided to open up Japan. And so we went to Japan, and what happened there is it was a brand new operation. I was instructed to be the vice president of marketing and sales, and that was in 1972. And in those days, in order for anybody to become a distributor with that company, we had to have a personal interview with them. We wanted to know who we were getting because we were going to be building a successful company and we wanted good people. But we also wanted them to know what were going to be the requirements from us and what was expected of them. And so I had the opportunity of traveling around Japan interviewing prospective distributors for that particular company. And I'll mention a city named Miyazaki. There was a man named Isamu Masuda who was working in Fukuoka. He was a clerk with a bus transportation company. And just about the time that I arrived in Japan, his first son was born with very serious health issues, physical handicap. And he knew that he wouldn't be able to provide him the operation and so forth that he needed to have a normal life unless he found a different way uh, to help his family. He was a pretty sickly kid, raised by a single mom. His dad had died as a result of the war, uh, and in dire poverty as a child. So he wanted to figure out how to provide a better income. Well, there had been some network marketing companies that were starting to arrive in Japan. One of them was a company called Shackley. And because of his own health issues, he became a distributor for a few months with Shackley and that was a real help to us because at least he knew what network marketing was when I arrived to doing an interview with him. Well, he decided to be a distributor and was just an amazing success with that company. He was so nondescript for us. We just had no idea that he would become one of the top distributors in that company. And in fact, he went through all of our training programs. We had some special advanced programs in Hong Kong that we flew the key people down, and he was one of those. And just an amazing success story. In fact, at that point, we appointed him to be a vice president of our distributor force in southern Japan. Well, that was an exciting time. The company was growing really fast, and then the owner was killed in a plane crash, and the company decided to change the management. And I left and started a consulting company, and Mr. Masuda left and he had run across these Japanese scientists who had been working on magnetism and studying the effects of the magnetic deficiency syndrome, and had developed a prototype of insoles for shoes, and had some really good results. And so Mr. Masuda decided that this might be the chance for him to put into operation his own plan for personal growth, personal development, where the product of his new company could be people, and they would be using this product that would make a difference in the health of individuals. Well, the name of the company, he named it Nikken, and decided that he would incorporate as many of those training programs that he had experienced as possible. So he hired us, my consulting company, Robert White was my partner, to set up the training programs for this new company. Well, that worked out really well. I mean, we give you an idea. We were so broke in our business that we were developing a program called American Sales Masters with all these training films with Norman Vincent Peale and Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar and all kinds of folks. And but we didn't have the money to put them into Japanese. And so we went and sold the program to Mr. Masuda, and he financed the operation by buying the program, which was a year-long program, but 13 films. We only had one, and so his buying that program made all the difference in the world. Well, it evidently made a big difference in his company, because for the next 4 years, the growth of Nikken set a record for the fastest growing network marketing company in the history of Japan. And in fact, they reached $1 billion in sales faster than any company in the history of the world up to that point. Of course, the network, the online internet companies changed that record later on. But it was an amazing story. Well, I decided that it was time for me to move my family back to America. And so I went back to the United States, and was used occasionally whenever he decided he needed some new people trained with his company. He would either send me over there to do the trainings in Japan, or he would bring them to Los Angeles or San Francisco, and we'd train 20 to 30 of his top people to be the instructors for his company. Well, I was chomping at the bit because of the success that he was having. Please, let's bring Nikken to North America. And he would always respond, no, America isn't ready for us yet. The only way they believe that health can be affected is with pills or operations or things of that sort was the Western style to have healthy companies, healthy people. But in 1989, he decided that it was time to, America might be ready for this new novel concept. And so he appointed Mr. Watanabe to be the president of the operations in North America and asked me if I would head up the training programs in North America. Well, that was an exciting step for me. So Pat and I moved again. You probably heard that song, that country song about now we moved to Utah, now we moved and so forth. And she followed me. Well, Pat was following me, but boy, she was sure suspicious of magnets. Whoever heard of magnets?
Dragging my feet.
Well, what happened is he decided to open up his operations in Brazil. The largest population of Japanese outside of Japan was in Brazil. And he had a man there named Nisobe who wanted to start the Nikken operations there. And so in 1990, Nikken decided to hold their first international convention. And it was going to be in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he asked us to come and be a part of that. And so here comes Pat, reluctantly on this long trip, but it was a free trip and the company was paying for it. And she had not really met Mr. Masuda up to that point. And it was a marvelous experience. About 2,500 people there from 3 countries then. He had Taiwan, Brazil, and Japan, and now North America was the 4th country. So we had a marvelous experience. And then as we were getting ready to leave, I was taking the suitcases to load on the bus, and Mr. Masuda came up to me, and he had done this a little earlier, says, "Mr. Prophet," through a translator. I've only ever spoken to Masuda in Japanese through a translator. He said, "Do you remember what you told me when you interviewed me in Miyazaki, Japan in March of 1973? And I didn't have a clue. I didn't even remember interviewing him back then. And I said, "No, I don't remember." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a 3x5 card, laminated in plastic. I couldn't read a word on it. It was all written in Japanese, but the bottom of it that said "L Prophet." And he showed it to me and he says, "What you told me in that interview changed my life." Now I'm starting to feel really good. Boy, how, I knew I was pretty important, but that was a surprise to me. I asked him, "What did it say?" And the translator translated it. And here's what it said: "In order to become the person you wish to become, you must first think, talk, walk, and act as if you already are that person." Well, all of a sudden I recognized something. That was some of Earl Nightingale's stuff that I had learned years and years ago. And I realized that what had happened in that interview with him, it wasn't Prophet that changed his life. It was Earl Nightingale, because I had put that into my little computer between my ears such that when he said something in that interview, I could pull that out of the stuff that I had learned and share it with him. And he said it changed his life. Of course, I got the credit, but I know who it really was. Well, that was a really important experience for me, because I recognized that Mr. Masuda, what was happening with his company is he had become a product of the product. He had incorporated those training programs. One of the things that had impact that we had taught him years earlier was how the only way you'll have real joy in life is through service to others. And that when you're in service to your fellow man, you're in service to your God. And he knew that. And when he incorporated Nikken, he also had learned some things from his good old single mom about how if he was to experience peace and joy in his life, he would need to have a balanced life. What what we had taught him is that the real purpose of life was to experience joy. Man is that he might have joy. And so for him, that was one of his driving motivators. And so when he started Niken, most of you are familiar with the life cycle plans, he incorporated the 5 pillars of health, where his company would be able to provide one of the pillars, but would also provide people a way to get balance in their life where they could have that peace and joy. Now, I'd like to have Pat tell you one of her experiences in Brazil. As I said, I had gone to put the suitcases in, and Masuda came over to Pat to talk to her about telling her goodbye. Would you share, Hun, with your what your experience was with him there?
Like Larry mentioned, I was really dragging my feet, but this was a free trip and I really enjoyed it. A lot of the things were in my heart at that time because of financial reasons and other reasons. Larry and I were struggling, and I was resisting this business with these magnet things, and I was really in resistance until we went to Brazil. And just seeing the people that we met and what great people. It wasn't just the excitement, but it was more of a cause. And so I was really feeling that and feeling really quite good about that. But then this Mr. Masuda, I wanted to meet him. That I had seen him and observed him, but I had never talked with him or had any interpersonal uh, communication with him. And I met him through a translator, and then he gave me this hug um, that just melded my heart. It's hard to describe. I knew in that embrace that he was a really good man and that he knew me. It's almost like he could see through me, like he could see the the heartache that I had been experiencing or something, and just the resistance was just coming out of me. And I remember after that hug, tearful and just a release of a lot of negativity, and was just sobbing actually. uh, and then when I got on the bus, Larry was like, "What happened? What happened to you?" And I, was crying, and I said, "I don't know what you're going to do with this company, but you better get on board because they're going to go someplace with or without us." And I think that's all that Larry needed after that was my support, and he was doing okay anyway, but I gave him my total support after that. And we have enjoyed a very happy, joyful ride, knowing Mr. Masuda, and through our experience with Nikan, it's been a wonderful, wonderful, life-changing experience.
I love that story, and I've got to share kind of a story after the story. We knew each other quite well, and the first time I went to Japan to a convention, you and I, we hung around quite a bit together, and part of that event was going to the home office, which included being able to meet Mr. Masuda one-on-one. And when we got in there was a line of hundreds of people, and realized that they were going into his personal office and getting a personal Masuda hug. I remember you two ahead of us, and Pat, you were right in front of me. And when he saw you, he was excited, and you came up and hugged him. And I remember you actually saying, "Oh, I love you. You're so wonderful," something like that. And you were moved, but I saw him moved. And as you went away, then I came up to him, and he had taken a hanky out, and he was wiping tears. So he made you cry, and you made him cry. What a wonderful heart of Nikan.
I think I ought to share about that man because he was a product of the product, but he touched the lives of so many of us in what it was that made him the leader that he was. He wasn't one of these Gestapo dictatorial type that says, here, do it my way, and so forth. He surrounded himself with people who bought into the cause, who wanted to help. And they came up with ideas that he incorporated immediately. In fact, what was interesting to me, most of us who have met him, and Dave, I know you agree, he's probably the most ego-less man that I've ever met. Just he just needed no credit himself at all. He would pass it on, and he was so interested in the excitement that other people were experiencing, and he really was realizing what it was that brought real joy. And that was when you are in the service of others and can watch them grow and develop. One of the things that happened for me that was one of the best lessons, well, it's one of those things that you're taught and sometimes you don't learn. Some of you will identify with this, those of you who know me. He'd asked me to come over and help do what was then known as Silver Training, the 2-day personal development program in Taiwan. And there were 800 people in the class. I mean, it was a marvelous experience. Just an aside, some of you may want to know that at that time, about 10% of the nation of Taiwan experienced that training class. It was a real amazing thing that happened. But there we were, and he did his part in the training, and it was his job now to introduce me to do the next section in the training. And I was just absolutely amazed. I mean, here was the chairman of the president of the company, the founder of the company. Everybody just worshiped the ground he walked on, and we just loved the guy. And he gets up to introduce me, and he says, now this next person I want you to pay special attention to is my teacher. And well, first of all, can you imagine having to go up on the stage after an introduction like that? Well, from then on, the lesson that I learned was that didn't cost him anything to say that about me. But what that did is it put me on a position, a pedestal, if you will, with those people, that they would listen to every word I say, because I was their idol's teacher. Well, that was an important lesson to me, because from then on, I mean, my trips to Taiwan, whenever I went over to do training, I was no longer Mr. Prophet. They said, sensei. I mean, they would call me teacher. And what that did for his company, because he couldn't be there all the time, it gave me a platform where they had so much respect, because they knew that Mr. Masuda had learned this, had grown from it, and that they could too. That was an important lesson. Most of the people who run those companies have such big egos that for them to give anybody any recognition, it always has to come back to them. In fact, they try to create cults around their image and what they do and what they did. And that was not true with Mr. Masuda. His humility, I think, was one of his strongest attributes, which meant that he could build his people without any fear of jealousy, without feeling that they would be a challenge to him, and he just gloried in their successes. That's probably the biggest thing I remember about what it is he taught us. But the thing that made him so real, and I think the reason that most of us felt so good around him, is he was the definition of authenticity. He was so genuine. What he taught and what he wanted us all to teach our people in Nikken was the importance of the heart message. That you could learn all the scripts, you could learn all how to answer objections, you could learn all those things. And yet, if you were coming from a real heart message of total sincerity and caring about them, that it would personify what Ziegler coined the phrase years later: if you can help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And that was the prime lesson, I think, that he wanted us to get across. Meaning that I could be talking to somebody and I could make all kinds of mistakes. But if I really believed in what I was doing, if it came from my heart, they would see past my mistakes, um, and would feel people. We always taught this in sales. People make decisions emotionally, not logically. And when they feel like you're giving them a story that isn't authentic, that isn't real, that you are just in it to see. In fact, we had one young man ask us, he joined the company, and he came up to us at a party one night and he says, okay, I need to know what's going to be the secret in you can for me to earn some money real fast. And Pat blurted right out, she says, you're not going to earn any money and you can. With an attitude like that, you won't earn a dime. And he was upset about that, but it was really true. He was coming in for the wrong reasons. And that's why the back roll was one of the key things. Dave, I know you've been probably the personification of that idea of serving people first. The back roll was what triggered the whole company's change when they decided to incorporate the sleep systems, because it was an expensive product. People wouldn't buy it. Mr. Isobe, one of his key distributors, when they first came out with it, was having a really tough time. He'd gone and he said he talked to 100 people and not one of them bought the sleep system. And he was really discouraged. And so he went over to his mother's place and was kind of complaining and talking about how hard this thing was. And she said to him, and I'm going to use a name that, but she said, well, have you talked to your Uncle Harry yet? And she says, yeah, I talked to him, but he refused to even listen to me. She says, come on. So she took him over just a few houses down where her brother was, Uncle Harry, so to speak. And she says, here, listen to this. This thing really works. And Masuda gave him, Isobe gave him a back roll. He bought the sleep system, and that was what developed the ABC approach. In other words, that was one of those things that built Niken, and it was caring enough about people to give them a back roll, but to have a friend introduce you to them who they trusted. And so that was the kind of things that Mr. Masuda wanted to learn from, how to build a company based on service to others. So many great memories when he would come to America and would speak to us. He never learned English except the phrase, I love you. That was the only phrase I think that I learned. I talked to him in Japanese, I love you, because you never had any doubts about that when you were with him. And you knew that you were important to him. I remember when Pat had that experience with him in Brazil, she was in a heap when I came back. And I, what did he do to you? And her comment to me was, I've never felt so much love from another person in my life. It was from the heart, and he wanted people to know that he cared. It was powerful. Well, let's see. Anything else you can think of?
He was heart to heart.
I'm gonna, even though I haven't seen him in a number of years, it was a real shock to hear that he had passed away. He'd had health problems all his life from the time he was a little kid, and yet had developed himself. He after he had sold Niken to Mr. Watanabe, he went on to do things. One of the things he wanted to do was to develop a training school for parents. And the idea would be that the children are influenced by what their parents teach them. Let's make sure they're teaching them the right stuff. And so that was a very important thing to him, the children of the world. He got involved with Habitat on Humanities. He was really a big portion of the donors for that. He also, most of you have heard of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He loved that whole concept. And in fact, the last year and a half, 2 years of Viktor Frankl's life, Mr. Masuda had him over in Japan, traveling around, sharing with people what he had learned and the concept in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. um, because it had made such a difference in his life. And that was living a life on purpose where you could make a difference. And the thing that we had on our life cycle plans was a statement that really made sense, especially when you knew Mr. Masuda. And that statement was, if he can, so can I. A powerful concept where people would get past their own limitations. And he spoke about what his limitations were when he shared with people that, but that they could become all they wanted to be. And that's when he incorporated that slogan, humans being more. That wasn't what he founded the company on, even though that was the philosophy. When he brought it to America, his thing that he wanted us to look at, he said, human being more. And it sounded like a Japanese translation. It didn't sound right. Took it home to Pat. What do you think? Human being more. And she's, why don't we add an S? Humans being more. That's what Mr. Masuda believed. And so that was why we even changed the name of the silver training to a class of humans being more, because it personified or explained more completely what the purpose of Nikken was all about and where Mr. Masuda's heart was.
Oh, this has got me excited all over again. Boy, I think I could sponsor myself one more time, and just being around positive people make a difference. And this reminds me of, I think, maybe the most powerful idea I've ever heard. Where you will be in 5 years depends upon the people you associate with, the books you read, what you listen to. We have the opportunity to become what we think about, and we can direct our lives by directing our thoughts, by putting good things into them. And that book, Man's Search for Meaning, our newest president, Luis Kasuga, president of Nikken Global, he said that's his favorite book, and he reads that every year. That's a pretty neat thing. With along that line, that maybe the most successful person isn't the person that reads the most books, but they read the best books the most. You might get more out of reading the best book a few times rather than several other books. So it'll sink deeper into your mind and become more permanent and affect your heart. And oh goodness, I think about Luis Kasuga. He is such an example about just continuing that legacy, the same heart. And wow, if you hang around good people, it'll rub off on you. This is amazing stuff.
To me, he personifies the Masuda heart message better than anybody I think that I've met in recent years. He really is a believer. His heart is right. Had the chance to work for a number of years with Mr. Kasuga. Loved the guy, and I was so excited when he became that important part of Nikken, because he does have the Masuda integrity and heart message. I know that the company's in good hands.
Yes, we are in good hands. And Larry and Pat, thank you so much. We're so thrilled to have you as friends, and thank you for sharing. I love this idea of influence, a wonderful opportunity, even an inescapable responsibility. And why not have a bigger influence on a greater number of people? I would say the most successful people are the people that affect the most people in the most positive way. And so let's get this ripple effect going and make a difference in lots of people. We can change the world. We are going to change the world. Love you all. Thank you.